Hi, today we're going to make chicken noodle soup. Now this is not any chicken noodle soup, this is my mother's chicken noodle soup, which probably was her mother's chicken noodle soup. Who knows? I don't know. But we're going to make the noodles first because it's very important that noodles have time to kind of dry. So just watch what we're doing here and we'll make this chicken noodles right now. Okay, we have a cup of flour and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and we're going to just stir that together so the salt's all incorporated. Make a little well in the center, and we're going to break an egg into that. Okay, and to this we're going to add 2 tablespoons of milk. Now we might use a little bit more, but right now we'll start out with 2 tablespoons of milk. Unfortunately, flour can, 1 cup of flour can be more than a cup because it maybe packs down a little bit. So we might be adding more milk to this. And then I'm just going to whip that together, trying to incorporate all the flour. And it's hard for me to explain to you how to know if there's enough liquid in there, but it has to start hanging together. We're just going to show you inside what it looks like as it's coming together, and keep moving that fork around until you get it all incorporated. Right now, I think it needs a little more milk. So I'm going to add about another tablespoon of milk, and we'll mix it together. Now when my mother made these, she would make about 6 cups of flour, 6 eggs, and put it all together. Now, here's where you need to get in there with your hands and get this all together. Something else she used to say is, don't leave any flour in the bowl, because that could be one more noodle that you're missing. Sometimes it's a little hard. Okay, so I'm going to move it out here. Get all that flour out of there that I can. And then I'm going to just knead that flour in with my hands. And as you knead it, it'll get stickier. So it's not as dry as it appears, but you got to get all that flour in there. Now, after we've kneaded this, we need to let it sit there for about 10 minutes so that it can just rest and the egg and the liquid in there is combining with the flour. Okay, we're ready to roll these now. We're going to use lots of flour. Doesn't hurt to use a lot of flour, because the drier these noodles are, the better they cook and the better they taste. But sometimes when they're too dry, they're really difficult to roll out. So here we have it. We're going to roll this out and keep turning it over, getting a little more flour in there all the time. That's okay. And we're going to just make it into a rectangle shape, because we don't want noodles that are 16 inches long. We just want shorter noodles, but maybe have them a little thicker. And everybody has their taste. Everybody likes, they either like them thin, they like them thick, but I happen to like them a little thicker. Going to add a little more flour. Turn it over. Add a little flour to this side. And then we'll continue rolling. Okay. Now, here's the trick. We have to add enough flour that we can roll this up and actually cut these noodles out. Now, I've had some people tell me that they use a pizza cutter and they just cut it from the pizza cutter. But you know, I was taught to do it this way, and I just can't change my mind. At home, when I made these, the kids would fight over who was going to unroll the noodles, and I had to keep their hands away from the knives. Okay, do you see the width of that noodle, but see the thickness of it? Okay. You're going to cut those all up. Okay, once they're all cut, you're going to unroll them. And this is where the little kids can help if you want. When I was a little girl, my mother would make huge amounts of chicken noodle soup. We're not going to make that much today, but it's easier to use a little bit bigger pan. And she would use a raw whole chicken, and she would put the chicken in the pan and cover it with water. Now, there's another way to do it. You can take a whole chicken, put it in a crock pot, add a cup of water, and then let it cook for 5 to 6 hours so that the chicken meat and everything falls right off the bones. But we're going to do it this way today. And I'm even going to change it up a little bit than what my mother did. I have a rotisserie chicken here. And I like to use these because they have a lot of flavor with them. So we're going to drop this chicken in the water. Now I take the rotisserie chicken, and usually I do a whole chicken, but I'm doing a half a chicken right now. And I just put it in the water, breast side down. Make sure the water is covering the chicken in the pot. And I even take the juices from the rotisserie chicken and put that in there. Why? Because it adds the flavor. Okay? So, then I bring it to a boil and boil that for about 5 minutes. If I boil it longer than that, then it dries out the chicken, and we don't want it to dry out. We just want to get the flavor from it. Now, I happen to like my carrots cut up a little larger, but you can cut them up in small sections. And I've already cleaned the celery. I usually make the celery a little smaller. And notice I have some leaves on here. This is from the celery itself. I add some of those because it adds better flavor. Okay? And now an onion. This is kind of a small onion, but usually a half of a medium onion. So I'm just going to cut this up. And you want to dice this up. You don't want big chunks of onion. So we slice it one way and dice it the other. And when I get them like that, I try to go through and even dice them up a little bit more. And here's where it usually gets your eyes and your nose. But that's not too much of an onion that it gets you too bad. Okay, we're set. Okay, I've been asked to say how I know this chicken is done and ready to take out of the water. If you can see here, the leg has come away from the breast, and the skin has come away, and you can see the flavor of this chicken is kind of on the surface of the water. And so this is pretty well ready to come out of here. So I'm going to take it out, and then it will sit there until our vegetables cook, and it will cool down enough that we can cut it up. Now I bring the water back to a boil, and I'm going to add all of our vegetables that we've cut up into that boiling water. Okay, they're in there. They won't take too long to get done. We're talking maybe 10 minutes. I put black pepper, some thyme, sorry, said that wrong, and some marjoram leaves, a little bit of garlic, and I've put them in here, and I'm just going to put that in. Now, here's the interesting part about chicken soup. You have to flavor it to your taste. As it is right now, it's just water. So we have to put the flavoring in it, and I really like this type of bouillon instead of the little cubes because it seems to have more flavor. So I will add a big old spoonful of this into that pot. This one is better than bouillon chicken flavoring. And we'll put a lid on it. And bring it back to a boil and boil it for about 10 minutes. And those should be done by then. The chicken has cooled off some, so we'll take it out, put it on a cutting board. We want to take the skin off because don't want the skin in that chicken soup. And I usually take the wing off. I usually eat the wing, but we won't do that right now. My mother cleaned the bones so thoroughly that there was never any chicken left over. But it's up to you. Do you just like chicken breast in your soup, or do you like some of the darker meat? The darker meat actually will add a little more flavor, but let's just pull it away from the bone, and you can make a decision what you want to add. And I'm going to just chop it up, and you can add some of the darker meat too if you want. We'll just do the breast this time. Okay, we've gotten our vegetables cooked in here now. Here's an important part about chicken soup. You need to taste it, maybe several times, to make sure that it's the flavor you want. Does it have enough salt? Does it have enough pepper? Does it have enough in there to give it a good flavor? So I always keep a bunch of spoons to the side, and I just want to taste this. Don't burn your tongue. It's a little watery, so I'm going to add some more bouillon. And right now, it's the time to add the chicken. Because it will add some more flavor too. We'll just put all that chicken in there. So we're going to just let that simmer just a little while to give it a little more flavor. Now I've pre-made some soup or broth here with everything in it so that we can cook the noodles. And before we cook the noodles, we have to bring it to a boil. It has to be a full boil before you drop your noodles in. Now we're ready to drop the noodles in the soup. We've got the soup at a full boil, okay, ready for the noodles. I have my bowl of noodles here, and I'm just going to drop a few at a time, because if I dump them all in at once. They'll stick together and you'll have a big gob of noodles instead of individual noodles. So right now, because they're dried enough, they don't stick together. That's the reason it's important to dry them. And then let it come back to a boil and drop more in. And stir them a little bit. Make sure you don't have a clump. I want these noodles to feel dry enough that they actually have a little bit of crunchy feel to the outside of the noodle. They're still soft inside, but the outside of the noodle is kind of crunchy. And you can see the noodles as they start cooking, they kind of come to the top, and I always want to eat them about now, but they're not all the way done. Okay, now turn it down a little bit so it's simmering and add the lid. And you can put a timer on for 10 minutes, but it should cook for about 10 minutes at a very low boil, okay? Oh, and by the way, I made this soup this morning so that we could go ahead and add the noodles to it. This one is not quite ready to add the noodles, and the noodles are not dry enough. So we'll do something different with this soup. But this is almost done. Okay, our soup is done. I cooked those noodles for about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, and here's what it's going to look like. All right, see how the noodles have come to the top. The soup itself is thickened, and the best way to tell is if you eat one of the noodles to make sure it's cooked through. So you take a noodle out of there. Well, I can't even get one. There's the noodle, okay? Make sure it's not too hot. Perfect.